talking about is not just about having more, although having more is nice sometimes, but it's about being more. So it's starting from a different place in terms of value. And being more is about being yourself more. Those softer, what could be described as softer and therefore less value, are really, we're trying to flip that around and change and think about it in quite a different manner than just to become good employees working for the man or woman. Okay? So, so the way we try to do that is through these streams of community employment connections, education development, and self-educational connection, or say self-cultural connections. Okay. So here we see those kinds of things. So although we made some of the wheels bigger than others, really they were balanced in terms of the way in which the actual curriculum rolled out, but intertwined. Huh? You know, we talk about overlap or convergence. Within Indian country, I call it Indian country. I came from a long time ago, before any of you or most of you were born. It was really simple in those days. Really, really simple. There was cowboys and there was Indians, right? And you knew which side you were on. Now we've got First Nations people, we've got Aboriginal, Métis, Inuit, non-status, status, Indigenous, and in the past it just used to be no problem. There was just white people and Indians. Now there's all sorts of different heritages, all sorts of different colors of people that have come to Canada and make this place their home. So it's really quite different than the black and white, dare I say, dichotomy between self and other. You know, it's much more interesting than those days. But in Indian country, and I'm talking about that as a place at Turtle Island, we always start with the self as being the center. So that I believe yesterday when the keynote speaker spoke, she spoke about if we are going to be change agents in facilitating change with individuals and organizations and governments and so on, we have to be prepared to change ourselves. So that, in a sense, resonates with the idea you change yourself and then the world changes. So here we see our spirals of learning engages that self-cultural piece, the education development piece, and also the community employment connections. The distinction there is that we separate the market, usually in Western society, the marketplace from the social or political space. You know, you get a job and so on and so forth, and that's sort of one area, and then the rest is volunteer or something like that. But for a lot of our learners who come, say, from the res, that's a colloquial term for the reserve, who come from the land, see the city, urban environments as a resource, whether it be education resources, employment resources, housing resources, service resources. It's all part of the same picture. So they're looking for resources coming from a place of few resources. Poverty is being defined as not having access to resources. So the resources we see are connected between the community and employment, part of the same skill set, if you like. So here we see three streams of learning, But also the conceptual framework that we used was resiliency, self-directed learning, which is a part of essential skills, and we'll talk about that, communities of attachment, and respectful enculturation. So these were woven through, and there was resonance with the Ontario Ministry of Training colleges and university, essential in self-management, self-directed skills. So we were cognizant that we weren't inventing a new wheel, but rather there's a convergence, similar areas of interface. Okay. So here you've got these kinds of streams, these kinds of features all sort of being mixed in the stew, if you like. Okay? Excuse me, before we're going to do a little bit of a break, but one of the, not the break, but a conversation amongst ourselves. We wanted to start with sort of, and I don't think it's an Indigenous concept, but I think in the healing business, where many of us have come out of literacy or healing and survival perspectives, in Indian country we've been doing a lot of work around issues of healing and well-being. And so there's a lot of literature there and a lot of experience about how do we heal ourselves. So we've got treatment centers around the country. We've got programs going on in most reserves that are trying to address in some sort of a meaningful way, how do we get out of this sort of colonial, often violent, unhealthy situation. So there's a lot of learning that's been going on over the last 25 years in that field. And one of the things where it's resonated is that with the psychology areas, and that's what we're calling holistic health, holistic well-being, mind, body, spirit, heart, emotion, affect, and also the social, political context. So that we're talking about holistic healing and resiliency, you know, positive psychology is resonating with that. They're starting to catch up to Indigenous people. And I see some of you, that means yes in your culture?
What does it mean in yours?
Yeah. Go slow. Resiliency is about bouncing back in the face of adversity. Being able to get up in the morning to face the world with its difficult relationships, circumstances, experiences, and intergenerational traumas. Many of our people have come from that. Most of our people come from that kind of experience of living. Intergenerational trauma due to residential schools, alcohol, and substance abuse, and we can go on and on. So that Darlene works with that on a daily basis. People who are living lives which are very complicated, perhaps more so. And we're finding that it isn't just kids that come out of high school that are taking advantage of our programs, but often they're adults, young adults, or middle-aged adults with a number of kids, so that it's a little bit different than the demographics, where people who are moving from high school into employment to or high school to upper education and then employment, we have a gap where people start to build families. So they're often older, mature learners in that context. Resiliency is uncovering, reclaiming, and living the strengths, relationships, and gifts that the Creator gave to us from the beginning of creation. That's a little bit different for those of us who are practicing or studying some of our own ways. We don't believe that we came to this world with original sin. Okay? That's not part of the deal for us. That already we have full potential, but society creates the coverings, the blocks, the difficulties in our lives which allow or which inhibit our ability to live ourselves to our full potential. so that we already have ingrained within ourselves everything we need. And it's only society's job to help to unpack that. A little bit different. So it isn't going out and getting skills or getting values or getting beliefs way out there and bringing them towards us. They're already here, so it's just a matter of getting through those codes. Am I getting blurry?
No,
Yeah.
you're
There, oh, that's good.
Is that better? Okay. So that's that empowerment perspective. But it isn't bringing skills from way out there, it's uncovering that which is already there. A different way of thinking, a cultural difference in that. So this notion of feeling equal, not looked down upon, support, the uniqueness, really, really important. And Darlene was able to bring out that kind of work with, I want to call them my kids, but some of them were almost as old as I was. And motivated, and I remember this one fellow, I'll call him Terry, but that's not really his real name. He came in, I want to learn math because I want to be a carpenter's helper, and he got some of that. But through the program, he started to learn about other things. He got interested in his own healing. He got interested in the spirit, the survival, so that he was learning many more things than that which he thought he was trying to get. So it was that soft stuff, I suppose. But actually, when you think of it, it was the hard stuff in the middle. He was getting, pieces were fitting together, and he was valuing his own experience and learning how to trust that. Did it? We're all familiar with something like this. When we talk about self-directed learning or learning to change, self-directed continuous learning, lifelong learning, within the Ontario Literacy Coalition itself. You can find this on the website. So we saw that convergence, so working with others, the social skills, how to reflect upon oneself, the personal advocacy, the self-motivation, problem-solving, thinking, understanding themselves as unique. That was all part of it, but a convergence between good minds and that which was already there. Okay. So the program provided group and individualized based learning based on their goals. There was the hard skills, but where necessary and where possible, we correlated those with other kinds of learning. So that so that the idea being is that people became successful. The learner-centered approach that we're all familiar with. Where this kind of convergence happened, for example, and we'll get into that later, but let's go to the next slide. Communities of attachment. This, I guess, is that's your social ecological environment, or your social environment, depending upon where you come from. But it's the practice and negotiation of membership based on a shared history and future, shared circumstance and place, I might add. And one of the things I was remiss about today was that during our smudge here, I didn't acknowledge the spirits of this place. I did not acknowledge the ancestors of this place. I did not do those kinds of things. Partly because I forgot, but How can you do that? Partly to remind you